Well, hello, Hormones Balance community, and welcome to today's conversation about resetting your body. What a timely conversation, especially during the time of spring, where I also felt like wearing something springy and
Me too.
exactly. You're like lavender, and you're like more like summery lavender already. Like you're ahead of time, Jodi. And it's such a good time, really to kind of press the reset button a little bit, and it can look differently to everyone, right? Some of you might want to do a detox, some others you might want to just get off alcohol or, whatever, be outdoors a lot more. And so everybody has got a little bit of a different, routine. And so here's the thing. There's a beautiful new book called Essential Oils, Boost the Brain and Heal the Body from Jodi Cohen, who is here with me today. She's a dear colleague and a friend. And, it really is a wonderful book. And I want to kind of walk you through some of the really great applications of essential oils, going beyond a little bit of just like going, I'm just going to burn like a couple of nice things at home. I think there's a lot of other applications, a lot of really interesting science. And I want to talk, there's some things that I've learned from that book too that I want to talk about, especially our brain function, really fascinating stuff. And so hey, you guys, we're going to be talking about liver today, how to support your liver with essential oils. We're going to talk about how to activate your lymphatic system, the highway of trash in your body. We're going to talk about how to activate your parasympathetic nervous system with essential oils and a lot of other things. So have the questions coming in, and we're gonna be kind of chatting a little bit with Jodi very casually, and then we're going to do your questions and then back to conversations. So Jodi, beautiful book. Congratulations. Brittany, let's post the link to Amazon where folks can check it out. Just beautifully produced. I really love, obviously, the content and really well researched, but also you have, as an herbalist, I'm very biased towards the fact that it's a lot of really nice images to look at. And
thank you.
And it just looks so pretty. So what was the major inspiration for you to talk about specifically the brain and what brought you to that point?
Well, like you, I've realized that plants are really the reset button, that the more plants we eat, the more we return to kind of balance and ground ourselves through nature. And I felt like oils are always kind of relegated in almost like this witchcraft category, like they're just diminished. And people don't really realize that, 50% of the pharmaceutical drugs that came out in the last 30 years are derived from plants. And that the pathways that oils travel through the nasal passageway, through the skin, there's scientific research that kind of validates that and backs it up. And so I just wanted people to understand how oils are working, because I think this is one thing I admire about you. I think when people understand how things are working, they're more committed to actually, following through. Like when they understand, like, oh, lemon water in the morning, this is what it does for me. Even if they don't like the way it tastes, they actually do it. And so I really wanted them to know, here's how oils work. Here's how you can use oils to support all the other things you're already doing to put you into balance. And then if you have oils at home and you want to make your own recipes, here are some different ways to do it. If you are not a do-it-yourselfer, I have it ready-made. Just really empowering people with more natural tools.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I just want to give an example. Like I'm sipping right now on a rosemary tea. And it's like, rosemary is like almost as good as caffeine for me, it just really awakens my brain. It just gives me like a really nice afternoon pick me up without compromising my sleep. Hey, you guys, I'm going to be talking a lot more about sleep in the coming weeks. It's going to be called Fixing Sleep After 45. I'm doing like a lot of experimentation on myself, and I'm going to turn it into like a extremely long and exhaustive blog post. But to really help everybody figure out what is your kind of, what screws up your sleep kind of a thing, right? And I can tell you one of the things that I'm researching now is that caffeine in the afternoon has quarter life for 12 hours, meaning that if you have coffee at 3 p.m., you have quarter of that caffeine circulating in your blood until 3 a.m., right? So that's quite huge. So that's why I'm abstaining from doing caffeine in the afternoon so that my sleep doesn't suffer. But then rosemary I found just to be incredible. So how about, let's talk a little bit about like, afternoon, a little bit of an afternoon slump comes in. What can we do, Jodi, to jazz it up a little bit with essential oils. And is it topical? Is it something you inhale? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and rosemary is a great one. There's actually tons of research on rosemary and peppermint. And when you inhale it, like honestly, direct inhalation, just opening the bottle and smelling, that goes directly to the part of your brain that helps you with focus, your prefrontal cortex. And what a lot of those are doing is they're helping more oxygen get to your brain because they're expanding the vasculature so that more oxygen can kind of flow up. You feel like you can focus. It's kind of like if you're if you're about to go run a marathon or something, sometimes eating a banana gives you quick blood sugar. That's energy. Sometimes smelling things that dilate your vasculature give you quick oxygen, also energy.
So besides rosemary, what else can we put in our diffuser? Is it diffuser? Is this something that you apply topically on your temples, or how do you do that?
Whatever works for people. I like to just smell because I think diffusing sometimes, if you think about the space in the room that you take up and how much the diffuser goes through the room, it doesn't all get to you. Peppermint, you can actually just open and leave like on a countertop near you and you'll smell it. Some people really like citrus oils. Those can be very mood enhancing and expansive. It doesn't necessarily matter. It's kind of like whatever your favorite thing is. And just knowing that you can smell it, you can topically apply it on the temples. You can also put I love frankincense, or my other favorite at the moment is cypress. I find that very expansive. Sometimes just putting it at the very base of the neck, I feel like that kind of opens up the blood flow. You can put it on the side of the neck. It's really kind of a preference. It's just the idea that if you're feeling tired, peppermint seems to be the one that is the most uplifting and energizing for most people, and rosemary. But if you don't like those, pick something you like.
Yeah,
lemon.
And you've got a ton of examples in your book.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about, one of the things that you talk about in your book is the importance of the parasympathetic nervous system and just the overall health. And I would like to explore this a little bit more with you. And, with your permission, we talked about it before the show, that you went through a horrendous tragedy. Was it 3 years ago now?
Yeah, it was on the 27th, August 27th, 2018.
So two and a
half.
Two and a half years ago, yeah. And you lost your son in a car accident. And that was just, it was just, I remember I just could not focus for the rest of the day, just thinking about what you must be going through. Can you tell us a little bit, for people who are going through stress and just based on your own experience, tell us a little bit, and I actually never asked you that question, so I'd love to know more, what got you through, what essential oils, since we're on that topic, because otherwise it can get very broad very quickly.
Yeah.
But what essential oils do you feel like have given you the kind of relief to pull you through as an assisting tool to the journey?
Rose, I don't know. I know you lost people that were very close to you too. And for me early on, talking about disrupting sleep, I would wake up and it was almost like a Charlie horse in my heart. I couldn't even breathe. The grief was so overwhelming and intense. And, with a Charlie horse, for me, I stand up and walk and then it kind of goes away. I would notice that when I would put rose oil over my heart, that would help. Mm-hmm. It was almost like it would kind of take the wind out of the sails and I could breathe through it more. Movement for me, I just had to breathe through it. It was really this unbelievably intense momentum. And early on, it was a lot of trial and error, and I made a lot of epic fails. But I started to realize rose oil, and then I would just have to get up and move through the house. I put a yoga mat in my bedroom and just started, it was almost like this intense emotion was stuck in me. And the more I could help it, move out, the easier I could flow through it.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about the parasympathetic nervous system. And obviously yours was, anybody who's going through a lot of stress, trauma, the parasympathetic nervous system suffers a lot because the sympathetic nervous system really takes over. For those folks who are not familiar with those two systems, can you just do a quick overview and then let's talk about the oils?
Yeah, your body's operating system is called your autonomic nervous system, and it controls all of your automatic functions, your heart rate, your respiratory rate, your ability to digest food, to detoxify, to turn on or off inflammation, to turn on or off immunity. And it has two gears. Think of it like your car. You can either speed up or slow down. So when there's danger present, it allocates resources differently so that you can fight, flight, or freeze. And that's called your sympathetic nervous system. So for example, instead of routing blood to the organs of detoxification, they're routed to your arms and your legs. Your respiratory rate increases, your pupils, the black part of your eyes dilates, you take in information differently, selective attention, this kind of falls into trauma. And then when the danger passes, it's kind of like the party's over and you can clean up your house. And resources are allocated back to digesting your food, detoxifying your body, anti-inflaming, turning on immunity. The sad thing is that, emergencies, people talk about the tiger chasing you. There aren't that many tigers running down my street, but there's all this kind of anticipatory stress. You watch the news, you're worried about your health, your parents' health, you're worried about your finances, your relationship. All of these kind of thought-driven stressors can turn on your sympathetic state, just like a physical stressor. And that's where people get stuck, is they're constantly in worry, and it becomes this really vicious cycle where it almost feeds on itself. And this is why stress causes disease, because stress shifts you into kind of the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system, and you get stuck there. So you're never doing, all of the delayed maintenance continues to be delayed, and the garbage never leaves your body. It gets recirculated, triggering more immune reaction, more inflammation. So it's kind of like step one. In order to let the cells release the toxins, you need to be in the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. The on-off switch between these two branches is your vagus nerve, cranial nerve number 10. And just quick anatomy so that you understand how you activate it. It starts at the back of the head, splits, winds around both sides behind the earlobe. If you feel behind your earlobe, you'll feel your mastoid bone. That's actually where it's the thickest and the most accessible to the surface. It winds through your heart, your lungs, your throat, your liver, your gallbladder, all your organs, your small intestine and large intestine. And any point that the vagus nerve touches or innervates can be used as a point to kind of shift into parasympathetic. This is why deep breathing is so great, or yoga, for anyone who is like, why do I always feel great in Shavasana? Like the twists and the turns and the breathing, you have stimulated your vagus nerve to activate your parasympathetic nervous system. So it's a really powerful tool, but most people are like, oh, I'm terrible at meditating. Oh, I'm not good at deep breathing. Datiz Karazian early on was saying, like, gag yourself with a tongue depressor, gargle. Compliance was very limited because people felt like that's too hard. I can't do that. So when I started playing with oils, I launched my company in 2012. And right around that time, there was a New York neuroscientist named Kevin Tracy, who was actually doing kind of pacemaker-like device surgery behind the earlobe on the mastoid bone to stimulate the vagus nerve. It was so successful, the FDA approved this invasive surgery for migraines, epilepsy, depression. Basically, what he was doing is electrically stimulating the vagus nerve. And when I heard that, I thought, oh, oils can be very stimulatory. You talk about rosemary, oregano, thyme, clove. If you put a drop on your arm, it'll feel hot. It'll look red. It's stimulating the skin. So I started playing with actually using the Aura Ring. Your heart rate variability, your ability to kind of recover and return to resilience is a really good measure of your ability to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So I was playing with different formulations behind the ear and kind of seeing how that affected my heart rate variability and using that as a win. So clove oil, super stimulatory, but it's chemistry. It takes like 20 minutes to get through the skin. Lime, like most citrus oils, very small molecules. If you combine them, it gets into the skin much quicker. If you add fractionated coconut oil, which is coconut oil that doesn't get hard at any temperature, all of a sudden it works like an acupuncture needle. So here you have this relatively pleasant smelling, non-invasive tool that you can literally just put on your ear, and it's like gear shifting into the right branch of the nervous system so you can turn on healing.
Fascinating.
Thank you.
Is that you have a blend called the parasympathetic?
That is the parasympathetic, yeah.
There is the blend.
Yeah, and I know, your listeners might already own oils. I give all the recipes in the book just because I kind of feel like this is one thing I love about you. I think if you meet people where they're at, they're more likely to show up.
Hey guys, we're talking about a new book that's just come out from Jodi Cohen, Essential Oils to Boost the Brain, Heal the Body. Wonderful book. I highly recommend it. And, we are talking today about supporting your liver. So the reset that we mentioned in the title, really want to focus on parasympathetic nervous system, liver. We're going to be talking about the lymphatic system. So the parasympathetic is just it's so fascinating. One of the things I really appreciate about your book is that you don't go into that trap of what a lot of people do with essential oils of going, you've got gut problems, do these 5 oils, right? And nothing else. And like no mention of diet change or addressing your gut infections or stress or whatever. And so there's this, this panacea of health is just using essential oil. It drives me crazy.
Me too.
Because it works for a while, then it stops, it doesn't work, and then people get disappointed. And so you really use essential oils as a vital tool to really enhance people's health while making other changes. And I mean, obviously this is not an exhaustive list, but it's a great one. Like, for example, just to give folks an example, when we talk about when Jodi talks about the parasympathetic nervous system, and by the way, a lot of things are really well explained. So if you're not familiar with all these terms, it's really easy to understand. There is a whole section, for example, on how to improve your digestion under this parasympathetic nervous system, because it's true. Like if your digestion is a mess, then it's very hard for you to, like, even in yoga, they will say, it's like, how are you gonna sit in meditation? Sorry, how are you gonna sit and meditate for 20 minutes when all you want to think about is that you want to fart? I mean, I remember this guru like saying this once in India. It's like, you Westerners, you eat like crap. And then you sit there and you say you can't meditate because you got all these, GI problems, right? And he literally said, because you need to fart. And I thought that was just so funny, but it's so true too, right?
It's so true. Yeah.
So give us some examples of oils that can go behind the ear. So you mentioned clove, you mentioned lime. What else?
Well, oregano, it's interesting when you start to delve into the research, because there are certain oils that are always coming up and saying they're great for everything. Oregano, thyme, rosemary, clove, peppermint. They're all hot oils. They're all stimulatory oils. So you can really use any of them. It's kind of personal preference. Some of them I would dilute a lot more. Like oregano is crazy powerful, but it kills the good along with the bad. So I just say to use caution with that. Or even smelling. I mean, you can really... I think that you can train your nervous system to respond to anything. And it's almost like, like training your dog, right? Everyone has different cues. So it doesn't really matter as long as you're clear on the intention, that the intention is that you're going to kind of shift gears and calm down, and even you can even do it by like having an intentional breathing practice or prayer before meals or rituals like, rosemary tea at a certain time of day. But the 2 that I found in testing the Aura Ring trial and error, clove and lime were better than anything else. That said, if you don't like clove and lime, you can make your own recipe. But it's just the intention of activating the vagus nerve that I think is really important. Yeah.
And also, let's just add to this that one of the best ways of activating your vagus nerve, which is the nerve that stimulates or activates and the parasympathetic nervous system is what you want to calm down, is by deep breathing, but really the exhalation, a slow exhalation, is what really does it for you. And one thing is, if you guys are not familiar, I've been teaching a lot the 3-7-8 technique. 4-7-8 technique. So you inhale to the count of 4, you hold for 7, then you exhale to the count of 8. So the exhalation is the longest, right?
Yeah.
And you cannot, hold on a second. It says we're having trouble streaming to Facebook. It might be a Facebook issue. Okay. Let's see what is going on.
Okay.
I'm gonna see whether, can you guys, are we still with you? Can somebody let us know what's going on? I'm still seeing you. Okay. Well, it looks like we are probably, everything is fine here. Okay, great. Tracy's saying, thank you. Awesome. So the exhalation is what, and if you're not able to exhale for the count of 8, right, it just means that your sympathetic nervous system is overactive and you need to calm down gradually, and don't force yourself to exhale to the count of 8. That's like, it's counter. So I've worked with someone before, this is when I was in private practice, and when she was like, like that. And I'm like, no. This is stressful. This is stressing you out. So it could be that your exhalation at this point could just be 4. That's all you're comfortable with doing. But as you learn and as you use essential oils, sleep better, calm down a little bit, reframe things, having a really nice exhale is, Tracy's saying for 7-8 is great. Yeah, it really is a simple technique to master. All right, switching gears a little bit, I want to talk about the brain. So one of the things that I've learned from your book, which I thought was fascinating, was that was very much feeding on my recent, I want to say obsession in a kind of cute way, right? With Aura Ring and experimenting for the article that I'm writing, Fixing Sleep After 45, and thinking about, looking at what impacts my deep sleep. And also, for those of you who are fascinated by sleep, I do highly recommend the book that's called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker and PhD. And I mean, the guy is just obsessed with sleep. And one of the things that I got to really appreciate is the importance of deep sleep. And Aura Ring is the black ring that I'm not wearing right now. Are you wearing one?
I'm not wearing it right now either.
I'm kind of wearing it only at night. So because daytime, it doesn't really give me much data.
That's what I do too.
Yeah. I was just like, chunky thing on your finger, what for?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I thought was fascinating when I've learned from your book, which I didn't know about, and I maybe haven't come to that part in his book yet, is that during sleep and during deep sleep, you said that the brain shrinks in order to make space for all the liquids, right? And to flush out toxins out of our brain. And I can certainly feel the difference if I had a shitty deep sleep, like 20 minutes, right? And I'm going to write about it, what makes my deep sleep really compromised. And I want to teach you how to spot your own triggers. My recall during the day is definitely compromised. Like I'm not as sharp. I crave more caffeine. I get tired a lot faster in the afternoon. Like I feel like it's not the same level of, of connection firing off in the brain.
Yeah.
And so that was really fascinating to read like what happens and your explanation of that. Can you talk a little bit more about what else is really important for us to know about our brain health, sleep, and what essential oils can we use?
Yeah. So the system you're talking about is the lymphatic system, and they kind of discovered it in 2012. And it's this idea, glymph is from glial cells, which are brain cells, and then the lymphatic system, the glial-based lymphatic system. And so when you're awake, your brain needs to be operating at full capacity to keep you alive. It's only when you're sleeping that it can kind of shrink, and it's a little bit like a car wash. So the fluid washes through. And this is actually how you prevent neurodegenerative diseases, because one of the things that you do so well, people don't talk about, I think the 3 main important things for health are being able to kind of calm your nervous system, being able to sleep, and being able to detoxify. And sleep and detoxification go hand in hand, because what's happening is your brain is detoxifying, because if those toxins stay in your brain, then they trigger the immune system, which triggers inflammation, and inflammation presents as those symptoms we experience, like fatigue, brain fog, lack of motivation, depression. So the brain is kind of shrinking, which means you need to be sleeping. The lymphatic system is washing through and cleaning everything out. And then the exit route, in order to shepherd the toxins out of the body, is the neck. And the neck is the biggest bottleneck. There's a lot going on in the neck. There's the lymph, there's the nerves, there's the muscle, there's the structure, there's the veins. And it can all, just like if you're in the middle row of an airplane and you're between 2 linebackers, there's no room for your arms, because you're so compressed and congested. So the more we can help to support lymph flow, and that's where oils and castor oil, anything that really helps with the downward direction. It's a one-way street. The lymph is flowing downwards more heavily on the left side. It gets congested on the neck, left clavicle, under the armpit. There's a lot of research that oils, I list a ton of them. We have a lymph blend, but frankincense is great. Anything mint is great. Even Marisol's castor oil is amazing. Just helping to move the garbage out. But then what people don't realize is that drainage is a hydraulic system. So, the toxins go from the cell, it releases it when you're in parasympathetic, to the lymph, to the blood, to the liver, to the gallbladder, to the gut, to the toilet. But if the liver or the gallbladder are congested, it gets pushed back into the blood. And then you suddenly either have itchy skin or it's getting pushed out the kidneys and you wake up in the middle of the night to pee. So it's not just, you can't look at it in isolation. It's not just like you need to sleep and you need to have good lymph flow. You really need to be supporting your liver and your gallbladder so that things actually, it's like shepherding the garbage out of the body, keeping things moving. And one of the things that I love about plant oils, their job in the plant is to kind of help move fluids in a specific direction. So that's what they do in the body, especially like grounding oils that come from plants with deep roots, like vetiver, cedarwood, sandalwood. They're pulling things down. So for lymph, you're helping to kind of dilate so there's more space and then move things down. And the more you kind of, that old movie where they're like, we're walking. That's what you're doing with your toxins. You're moving it. And in each step, you're kind of alleviating congestion so that it doesn't get stuck there.
Awesome. Can I ask you for a demo?
Sure.
Do you want to show us a demo of like, how do you do like a lymphatic massage on your neck perhaps?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of great videos that are more in detail online. Like I love Marisol's castor oil pack, but if I'm traveling, I'll just put on a ratty t-shirt and put it over my, liver under the right side of my breast. So I use our lymph oil and castor oil, and I'm really just trying to do a downward motion, and for anyone who's dry brushing, the way I was taught is that you it's like taking, a tangle out of your hair. You start closer and then you move further out. So I'm really starting in the neck, and I can actually feel congestion in my neck. Frankincense is another good all around player. Like if you're just playing with this and you have frankincense in the house. So I just kind of do it on the sides of the neck. And then I really get into, you can even do this right now, like feel under your left clavicle and feel if it feels tender. And if that feels tender, that's a good point to just massage, you're out walking your dog, you're talking on the phone, just throughout the day, even just, your finger. And when we touch something,
Is this a lymphatic point too?
It seems like a congested point. It's not,
Okay.
It's not what's known. There are lymph nodes
You said left side. Why left side?
Because the lymph doesn't drain evenly. It drains 75% on the left side. So when you have lymph congestion, it's more likely that it's just the left side that's draining. And so the more, you can do both sides, but that seems to be the biggest bottleneck. Like for anyone, who lives in a city like Seattle, my daughter's had a lot of crew meets in Portland. So there's always traffic in Tacoma and Olympia. I just know and anticipate it. So I try to time it around when are those cities not going to be busy. I don't go through there during rush hour. So, the left clavicle is a little bit like the cities that always have traffic. It tends to be more congested. So,
it's funny you say that now, because as I'm just touching it, it's not tender, but it's definitely more sensitive as compared to right side. I feel like this one is like steady and solid.
Yeah.
And this one is like, I'm a little bit sensitive here.
Yep.
It doesn't hurt, but yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Well, but it's preventative maintenance, right? You clean your gutters before the leaves fall. You just kind of are being proactive. So the more we know to brush our teeth every day. Most people move every day. Most people eat vegetables every day. Just another thing to add in to be proactive and preventative.
Yeah. And it's so easy, right? You just sit there, talk to someone on the phone, or you're in a meeting and you just do this. And yeah, very cool. So let's talk a little bit about, I think sleep is a big issue. And I also I feel like it's a misleading thing just to say, I'm going to burn lavender oil in my diffuser, and then I'm expecting to have this amazing sleep like I was 22 again, sleep is just impacted by so many things. And the more I research this, the more I'm like, whoa, this is so, there's so many factors in here. But if we do have, you talk about melatonin here, is there any oil that can actually help production of melatonin?
It's not that it helps production of melatonin. It's kind of like, your seed rotation. It's trying to put the body back in balance so that the body shows up in its best capacity. So I have a blend called circadian rhythm. And what I talk about and try to explain is the underlying root cause of sleep can be different. Like it's different if you have trouble falling asleep versus if you wake up at 1 a.m. versus waking up at 3 a.m. So when you're kind of having trouble falling asleep, you're exhausted, you're so ready to just collapse, but your mind is racing. You're worried about whatever might be going on tomorrow. Maybe you had a conversation with someone during the day that it didn't go the way you wanted it to, and you're replaying it in your mind. So that is the sleep hormone melatonin is supposed to be released in response to darkness, and that helps you fall asleep. The challenge is that it works, our whole body is a symphony. We're not just one instrument playing on its own. So it works in tandem with the stress hormone cortisol. Like, to your point, if you're having coffee later in the day, you're pumping up your cortisol. And so that makes it harder for the body to release melatonin. Like, if if you need to be alive and survive, if you fall asleep, that's probably not the best thing. So the other thing is the melatonin is released by the pineal gland, a part of your brain that is not as protected by the blood-brain barrier. So blood rushes through the pineal gland only second to the kidneys. So any aluminum in, the pots you're using, the food, your baking soda, your deodorant, that is kind of exposed and vulnerable. Fluoride in the water can impact it. Glyphosate, that's sprayed on your food. And all of these things, there's a great researcher, Stephanie Seneff, who kind of talks about how these three chemicals combine and make a perfect storm. Like anyone who's done a kids science fair, you take Mentos and Coke and they blow up together. Yeah. Separately, they're fine, but when you combine them, boom, problem. Right. So when you combine glyphosate, aluminum, and fluoride, it can calcify the pineal gland, which means that it kind of compromises function. Right. And I don't say that oils are chelators, because chelation has a very specific definition, but I think that, like vegetables, they kind of help to remove stagnation. They kind of eliminate roadblocks. They kind of open things up. So you can use an oil. There are also some hormonal creams you can use. The point right above, not on the ear, but the skin above the ear, that's where the skin is really thin. So that's a great application point. It's also the pineal gland anatomically is right in the middle of the brain. So it's center with the eyes. So just applying certain oils, I go into detail in the book right there. You can put it on the top of the head, back of the head. I don't recommend, especially if you're kind of a tossy-turny sleeper, I wouldn't put oil on your face before you go to bed, because it could wind up in your eyes and that could cause other problems. Yeah. But that's just a way, for anyone who's struggling to fall asleep, to help kind of naturally boost your melatonin so that it's easier to fall asleep. And then we can talk about night waking if you want to too.
Yeah, let's do that. And I want to jump to liver after that.
Okay, perfect. So if you're waking up around 1 a.m. and you're so awake you could go clean your kitchen, that is usually related to your blood sugar. So what tends to happen is your blood sugar dips too low in the night. The body triggers the adrenal glands to release either cortisol or adrenaline as kind of emergency energy. And then you feel adrenalized. You're wide awake, And what the body naturally does is your pancreas releases insulin to kind of carry the sugar out of the blood and back into the cells. So the more you can support the pancreas in that effort, the quicker you feel kind of calmer and ready to fall back asleep. So like rose geranium is a really great oil for the pancreas. You can put a drop on a cotton ball and stick it in your pillowcase. So you're kind of diffusing it through the night. You can leave a bottle on your bedside table and smell it. You can put it over the pancreas. That one also, a lot of people report that helps with hot flashes. It helps to calm hot flashes. So that's just a great one to have. And then if you're waking up usually around 3 a.m., 3 a.m. is when the liver and the gallbladder are doing their heavy lifting. And sometimes if they're working too hard, it will wake you up. Or as we talked about, if they're overwhelmed and they can't process all the toxins, they'll push it back into the bloodstream where it goes out through the kidneys. So you then wake up and have to use the bathroom. So anything you can do either during the day or before bed to kind of support the liver and the gallbladder, both their vitality, making the bile kind of less viscous so that it flows more easily. That will really help you sleep through the night.
Interesting. For those of you who are coming in late, Essential Oils to Boost the Brain and Heal the Body from Jodi Cohen is now available on Amazon. Highly recommend the book. Because it's got so much great information about brain health, sleep, lymphatic system, engaging your parasympathetic nervous system. And let's pop a few questions, Brittany, and then we will finish it off with talking about the liver. Since we're talking about resetting, there is no resetting without resetting your liver too. So that's going to be a big one. So Kelly is saying, I was taught to do lymphatic brushing from the ground up versus top down. Are you saying top down is the best for clearing?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's personal preference. I think that if you're doing it and it's working, that's fabulous. I think there are a lot of different techniques, but if you're already doing something that's working for you, you don't need to change it. But you might consider, adding in frankincense or adding in castor oil or just other things.
Yeah, I just want to also comment on this. It's like, I think everyone has a little different theory on this. And, I don't know how much of that actually is really properly researched. So for example, in a detox center that kind of inspired me to do thyroid detox, the program that you always do is to massage it to brush towards your heart. So from top here will be towards your heart, where on your legs is going to be up, right? Because it's towards your heart. So it will be up here or be down there. So I think it all depends. At the end of the day, look, like, even when you go on a rebounder and you just rebound, right? It's a downward movement and you still get a lot of benefits from that. So I agree with you. I think it's a personal preference. And people who claim to be like super experts on this without any specific science behind it, I'll call bollocks on that. I think all of that is just really moves your lymphatic system, whichever way you do it. So you can't hurt yourself. Let's see whether we have anything else. What 5 oils should I use for health? Rita is asking. Well, that's a pretty broad question.
It is. I mean, my favorites right now, I really love cypress oil. There's been some research, like, with the respiratory things that are going around. Propolis is really great, and cypress. I think that the more you can kind of fortify your lung barrier, I think of the 3 little pigs, right? It's not that the big bad wolf was so terrifying. It's that the house was made of straw. So the more you can really enhance your lung barrier, and I think cypress is a great one, and you can rub it over your lungs, you can smell it, you can apply it to the clavicle points. I just really feel like that's lung barrier maintenance. I also love blue tansy. It's expensive. It's hard to get. It's from Morocco, but it does a lot of things. It's fabulous for histamine, for modulating anger. Like, we can talk more about the liver, but every organ in Chinese medicine is associated with certain emotions. And sometimes, especially, women who try to be nice and kind and put other people first, sometimes we feel angry and we don't let ourselves feel that. So we just suppress it and it gets stuck in the liver. I think that blue tansy is a really great one for helping to move that out. Oils sometimes in plants, they're very biofamiliar with humans, but I feel like they're kind of helpers, like they carry the burden that we cannot. So I love blue tansy for that. I love frankincense. I think it's great. And I think citrus oils, I think they're all good. I think whatever works for you and works for your budget, like neroli and bergamot have a ton of research. I think orange is great, and a lot of people really like it. It's really a fabulous one. So much of this is personal preference. Those are just mine that I like.
Yeah. What if you don't have a gallbladder?
If you don't have a gallbladder, you can still do a lot to support your gallbladder. I think that supporting the liver is really fabulous. It's kind of like the more you can strengthen the organs around it. And I think if you don't have a gallbladder, you want to be, proactive in taking bitters, taking binders, doing castor oil. Just know that you can have a fantastic life. It's just helpful to be proactive so that it never becomes an issue.
Yeah. Let's switch gears to the liver. I'd love to hear some ideas from you. As someone who's doing castor oil packs from our good friend Dr. Marisold on a weekly basis, I would love to know how to jazz them up a little bit and amplify them with some essential oils. What do you recommend?
Helichrysum is by far the best, but it's also outrageously expensive, which is why I kind of recommend blends. White grapefruit. There are a lot of oils that have kind of hepatic functions, meaning that they help give vitality and energy to the liver. The best thing about the liver is that it regenerates really quickly and it doesn't need, a lot of support. So castor oil, even the citrus oils, like lemon is a good one, grapefruit is a good one. Whatever you kind of love that meets your budget, and combining it with castor oil. Sometimes I, put castor oil on, put oil on and get in an Epsom salt bath. Epsom salt, you talked about lavender earlier. I don't think lavender is a panacea for sleep, but I've noticed that it works the best when you do it in an Epsom salt bath. So, 2 cups of Epsom salt, 1 cup of baking soda. I've been playing with borax because that sometimes amplifies getting the magnesium in, but add the oil to the salt before you add the water, because water and oil don't mix. And that just allows it to kind of integrate into the body more aggressively.
What if I'm doing a castor oil pack? For those of you who have the packs as a compress, right? And so what would you put, like 2 drops of those on a drop or 2 on?
Yeah. Just 1 or 2 drops. Less is more.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Well, I discovered it the hard way many years ago when I first started playing with essential oils. I remember using frankincense in my diffuser, and I think the instructions was like 3 drops, and I'm like, no, I want more, I want better. So I'm like 6, 7, 10 drops, right? 20 minutes later, I'm like, I've got a headache going on here.
Yeah.
So I remember as consulting someone, and that person said, there is such a thing as too much of a good thing. So
yeah. And the other thing for detox, oil pulling, which I know you talk about, I struggled with that because the oil didn't taste very good. But if I just use coconut oil and add peppermint, somehow that tastes like toothpaste to me. So it makes it more manageable and I do it more.
Yeah. I just started mixing sesame oil and black cumin oil, which is Nigella sativa. And adding, like you said, peppermint, clove as well. I think those are the 2 that I've just added to my mix. I just been making it myself and doing oil pulling. And oil pulling is another really fascinating one that, when I was in private practice, I had people coming back and saying, I went to see my dentist and my cavities are like, I've got no more cavities. Well, receding gums, my receding gums are all healed. I don't bleed from gums like I did before. And so the dentist will say, like, oh, my teeth are whiter. It was another thing, right? And the doc will say, or the dentist will say, well, whatever you're doing, just keep doing. And they wouldn't even ask what it was.
So I had a dentist appointment this morning, and it's funny. I have no cavities, but my gums are a hot mess. Like, I feel like my mouth is a horror film waiting to happen. I barely bled. Yeah, I give a lot of credit to oil pulling. I think it's a huge, and I also feel like the more you can pull toxins out from one area, like your mouth, the more you lighten the burden for other organs. So that's kind of what I'm playing with.
How has your health changed overall after the tragedy that struck your family 2.5 years ago?
It's funny because that was kind of my first response. Well, I had 2 first responses. I have a surviving daughter, and I knew how early childhood trauma really, stuck you into parasympathetic and messed up your life and put you on a path for autoimmunity. And so it's very, my priority was finding a way, like, kind of, I have to find my way out of it so I can like guide her through this. That was really what my intention was. And I really was super concerned that, I haven't seen any case studies of people like surviving this and being okay. So I kind of decided that was an intention too. And early on, there are different stages of grief. The first stage is shock. We're part of a community. I got so much outpouring of support that I didn't even remember because I was so in shock. I had to go back. I think the accident happened in August at Thanksgiving. I was waiting on a plane, and I kind of went through and realized, oh my goodness, all these people were so nice, and I didn't even acknowledge it. So early on, people told me all you needed to do was eat, sleep, and move. And that kind of became my mantra. I find if I group things in 3, I can remember it. Like when I'm overwhelmed, it's like ground center shift. When I'm stressed, it's like eat, sleep, move. And just knowing that, really focusing on the lymph system. And I think because I was so, in a very weird way, because my intention was to find a way to kind of support myself and help my daughter through it. And I really had to be so thoughtful in noticing, this makes me feel worse. This makes me feel better. I really, the biggest shift for me was my relationships, because I was a lifelong pleaser, perfectionist, oh, no, you go first. Oh, you pick what you wanted. And when I had no energy, I couldn't do that. And so I really had to get super clean and clear about boundaries and my own energy. And the headline news is that my health improved, but I think it's because I just couldn't sustain what I was doing. I was probably stretching my limitations when my world was all good. But when I had to deal with grief on top of that, I just couldn't. So I had to clean up a lot of messes. and really, get really clean. Like exercise and movement became a ritual, that always made me feel better. So I walked my dog a lot, and it's helping the lymph. But what I think it's doing, I think movement is really the only way out is through. I think that being very intentional and kind of almost like hanging on for dear life, I can't let go. So I became much more, resilient. Even diet, like in grief, theoretically, you're supposed to go through anger. I would notice that when I would follow your detox diet, I wouldn't feel angry. I think it's very hard to feel angry when you're just eating plants. So I started to do that more because it just made me feel better.
Mm. Well, Jodi, I think you are the first person I've met who went through that amount of trauma and came out on the other side, or is coming out on the other side. If this ever happens, if there's such an even term of coming out on the other side, but let's just say you are where you are right now, even in better health. And that just really, I think, kudos to you, and it's a proof that you live what you write about. For those of you who are coming a little bit late, we're talking about essential oils to boost the brain and heal the body by Jodi Cohen. Her name is right there at the bottom. It's available on Amazon right now. And so, clearly I felt like one of the things that I felt reading your book was that you just live through that. Like, this is not just theory that's pulled out from various research papers, but it's actually stuff that you had gone through, like you have actually put in place, and you live this stuff. And so your journey is a manifestation of that for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Go ahead. Is there, what else can we, is there something else that you think that's really essential that we missed talking about?
There are only two things. And the first one is this idea of kind of, Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor, basically says between the stimulus and the response, there is a pause. I call that the parasympathetic pause. And what really got me through was this ability.
Say that again. Say that again.
Between the stimulus and the response, there is a pause. And it's idea of, before you react, like I think, my whole life.
Something triggers you. And it's before you respond, there's this pause.
Yeah. And I was incredibly reactive always. And then I would regret it. Like, oh gosh, I wish I, had paused. I wish I hadn't said that. So anyway, the main practice is I would start to notice, when I was feeling overwhelmed or like my back was against the wall, and I would intentionally pause. I would apply the parasympathetic oil. I would take a walk. I would do something so that I could get really clear and kind of look at it almost as an objective observer, like it was someone else's movie. And in that clarity, it would be, someone like there was a lot of legal aftermath, which is very stressful because I think attorneys like to make you feel stressed because then you make different choices. So I would very intentionally notice that and hang up on them and say, like, I have to call you back, and then it would go from like, this is your only option to like, well, maybe I need more information. Well, maybe that's true, but it seems like I can do these other things. And once I felt like I had choices, then I felt better. I didn't feel as paralyzed or overwhelmed. And another trick that I share in the book, for anyone who has anxiety attacks, the different hemispheres of the brain do different things. The right hemisphere tends to be overactive when you're having a panic attack. So stimulating the left hemisphere, which is as easy as smelling something through the left nostril, balances the two hemispheres, helps you feel calmer immediately. So, I briefly mentioned that when you're in sympathetic, your pupils, the black part of your eye, gets really big. So you can take in more light. It's selective attention, because if it's a life or death situation, you can't be pondering your navel. You have to hyper focus on certain things. But when you're trying to assess all your options, being in that state, it's almost like you can't access your higher thinking. So that's really, that is the number one takeaway, because I could tell every day before I'd go to bed, I'd kind of look at my day in reverse, and whatever really good things popped out and really good bad things popped out. And I would just say like, okay, I can't do that again. That didn't go well, but wow, that was a good choice. I'm going to keep doing that. And every time I could calm myself before reacting, my relationships got better. My company got better. Like, shockingly, people like it when, you're able to say like, okay, that was a mistake. Let's, we just won't make that again, as opposed to like, biting their head off. So that really was a bit of a bizarre win.
Wow. Thank you for sharing, being vulnerable. So good to see you. I feel like I don't see you often enough.
I know.
Congratulations again on the beautiful book.
Oh, thank you. And yours too. I love it.
Thank you. We're talking about your book today.
Okay. All right.
I've been talking about my book the whole of March. So
I know.
I'm like, yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. I know there's a lot of questions that came in. There is, I think it really might be a good idea for you to get the book and get a lot of answers there. Jodi has a vibrant community too, and with her vibrant oils, and you can get a lot of support there too. So yeah, head over to Amazon, grab the book. And I will see you guys on Thursday. We're going to be talking about some new topics, including sleep. And so I will see you then. Thanks, everybody. Bye for now.